Hey, everybody, welcome back to some more not so deep thoughts from a pastor. A few days ago on Twitter, I saw a question that was posted. What's your favorite translation of the Bible? Now, the Bible is the world's best selling book by a large, large margin. And of course, if you can hear me talking now, you know I'm speaking English, so I'm going to speak about the English translations and my familiarity with them. But the Bible was not written in English, definitely not the King James Version, which a lot of times we think they were. It was actually written what we call the Hebrew Scriptures, a lot of times called the Old Testament, but calling them the Hebrew Scriptures is really better, was written in Hebrew. So it kind of looks like that, although this is a Hebrew Scriptures or the Old Testament, if we want to call it that. The original language of Hebrew. The New Testament was written in Greek. And that's what this one is here, although there's some parts that are Aramaic as well. That's what they were written in. Now, in my training, in my seminary degree, I actually had to study Greek and Hebrew. I'm better with Greek now, but that's beside the point. Those are the original languages and not our current day translations. But when it comes to Bibles, I've got a whole slug of them. But I don't cross the board either in terms of the available translations that I have. This is my first Bible. I received this on my confirmation day. This is the New Revised Standard Version, or NRSV. This one's probably my favorite translation of the text and the one that I use most often. Now, why is that? Well, pretty much because they told us in seminary that that's the translation that is most widely accepted in terms of present day scholarly activity, if we want to do that. So, but that's my original Bible. Now, this one by itself is just Bible, just the scriptures. And you can see I got a lot of notes and stuff in it. This Bible's pretty well beat up. I've had this one for a long time. I have the same translation, also the NRSV. This is the New Oxford Annotated Bible, which means it's got a lot of extra notes and such, appendices and glossaries and all kinds of stuff, but it's the same translation, still the NRSV. This is the one that I actually got for seminary and still use quite often. Now, the first one that I really started studying, this is the Life Application NIV Bible, New International Version, also very widely accepted. There are some translation differences between this and the NRSV, but it is a very, very good one. I actually recommend this particular Bible for someone who is really beginning to dive into the scriptures and study them. There's lots and lots of study notes on almost every verse. Very, very, very helpful. This one, big, thick one, King James, actually this is the King James, not even the New King James, but the King James Version. What's good about the King James is it's a very literal translation, at least for the Greek. I can't speak so much to the Hebrew, but from the Greek, it's a pretty literal translation. Sometimes we call that a really wooden translation, but almost word for word for word. So that's a decent one if you want to get something that really kind of keys you into that without some interpretation that goes from the original language into whatever the other one is. Now, what are some other options? What's the best Bible for you? That's kind of a secondary question to this. And there are a lot of different ones. Now, this one right here, actually, I'm going to hold them both together. Spark Storybook Bible and then regular Bible. If you can see, it says NRSV there as well. And the Storybook Bible is pretty much taking a lot of those major stories and putting them into more of a story version. So this one's aimed at children, younger ones, to introduce them into the Bible, to kind of get used to the stories. And then this one is more of like a youth Bible that's aimed at kids who are a little bit older, with some study guides and such in there as well. Now, as you can see, I'm partial to the NRSV. That's just the one, again, as I said before, the one that I typically use and the one that I typically like. But that's not to say it's the right one or it's the right one for you. There are many other options. There's another one that comes to mind called The Message. I don't have that sitting here in my office right now. The Message, written by a guy named Eugene Peterson, is his translation. So he's translating it into more of a common everyday English type approach. So it's not necessarily like word for word translation, but it's kind of what's the gist of this verse trying to say. And that's how he translated that one. But there's countless more, many, many different ones. And I'm not going to tell you one's right, one's wrong, or otherwise. Just know that there are a lot of options, anywhere from a very basic Bible that is just the flat out scripture to a lot of different application Bibles or study Bibles that have scholarly work in them to help uh, open up some of those ideas that are present in there. So those are just a few thoughts about Bibles. What's the right Bible for me? What's the right translation? Well, I don't know. I'm partial to the NRSV, but that's just me and my thoughts. If you have any questions or some other ideas, maybe things you're wondering about, you ever want to get in some not so deep thoughts of a pastor, throw those down in the comments, and I'll show you if I can tackle them. Thanks, everybody.